Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you all. So today we are here with our deck for the Anti-Spell Festival. And it's a deck that I've played here on the channel before, but not one that I've played in quite a bit of time. Although I do actually plan to cover this deck outside of the festival here ideally in the near future. So be on the lookout for that. But the deck, of course, that I'm talking about here is Adamancipator. This is a deck that, again, yeah, we played in, I like to refer to it as, the early days of Master Duel, that, Season 1 through 4, basically, as after the first week of Season 5 was when we saw the Sword Soul Tinny selection pack get introduced, and that shook up the whole meta, obviously. But before that, we had seen, it's funny because I see a lot of people refer to that point of the meta as Drytron meta, but it was very much Tri-Brigade meta. Lest we forget, yes, Drytron was the most annoying deck and arguably the second best deck, but it was the second best deck. Tri-Brigade was the best deck of that format. In any case, Adamancipator, yeah, we haven't come back to it in quite some time, not since Helki Fibrex got banned. That was a pretty devastating blow. Well, actually, we hadn't come back to it in quite some time before that either, but in any case, yeah, Helki Fibrex getting banned was a bit of a blow to the deck, but it definitely, the deck is far from dead, honestly. I was kind of under the mistaken belief that Helk was, maybe a bit more essential than it actually was. Not just to, a 60-card, grass variant, that obviously has its own engine and stuff going on, but even to this 40-card variant here, I thought, well, this 40-card variant probably doesn't function well at all without Hulk, right? Wrong, it actually functions just fine. I mean, of course, this is under the rules of the Anti-Spell Festival, but generally speaking, the kind of boards and setup we were able to do with this deck, were pretty impressive, again, for not running spell cards at all. Adamancipators being a solid, if you're looking for a solid combo-based pick for the festival, Adamancipators is definitely, in my opinion, the way to go. It's very powerful, and it does not rely on spell cards at all. In fact, we, in the past, had run several iterations of Adamancipators that only use Sekka's Light as the only spell cards we were playing, and even then they weren't that, particularly powerful. And then I think we're running, just droplets and lightning storms for a little while. In any case, this deck already didn't run very many spells, and the ones that it did, oh, and Miracle Rupture was another one we've used in the past, but this deck doesn't typically run very many spells, even when it does, and those that it does run are non-essential to the combos. So this is, as far as combo decks go, one of the ones that's easier to get away with here in the Anti-Spell Festival. So we're including some things here that we hadn't in previous iterations of Adamancipator, not just because, of course, we're in the festival, but also because, we didn't have the tech at this time, or at the time we were playing it last, namely the Thunder Dragon Colossus I crafted, I think, after I stopped playing Adamancipator. But this is actually a very strong addition to the deck. It's not hard at all to find Cupid Pitch, because you just need to synchro, one of your level 2 tuners with a level 2 non-tuner. It's mainly going to be Doki Doki for us. You could also include the, it's the Rock level 2 non-tuner that specials itself from hand by banishing a tuner from graveyard, I believe. You could play that as well if you wanted an additional level 2 non-tuner. But yeah, so Cupid Pitch is not terribly difficult to make in this deck. From there you can, adjust its level accordingly for your plays. You can maybe even go to a Baron with a Cupid Pitch. But more importantly, we're going to search rather the Nemeses Corridor, which can then go into the Thunder Dragon Colossus. This deck obviously banishes a lot of stuff with Block Dragon, so you're never going to have a problem. As long as you can get the Nemesis Corridor to your hand, you're never going to have a problem summoning it and then dropping a Colossus. On top of everything else you can drop on people with this deck, is going to be a very, very powerful tool, very powerful asset. We are running the Union Carrier Buster Dragon package because I haven't been running this in a deck since Adamancipator, so I'm like, yeah, you know what, let's go ahead and just bust it out. Why not? Didn't even mean to make that pun there, but I actually didn't end up falling back on it at all in the games that we're going to see coming up here. I haven't played a whole lot of games in the festival yet, just 8, but I am 7-1 so far, which isn't terribly surprising. I think if you weren't going to go for a combo-based deck like this and one of the more, back row-oriented deck, Trap Tricks would be the way to go for that. They're definitely one of the more powerful. Just due to the, Floodgates being banned on the ban list, Trap Tricks is a pretty solid choice, too. Eldritch is still fine. It's still a solid contender. Those would probably be my top 3 picks. Would be Adamancipator, Trap Tricks, then probably Eldritch after that, but yeah, let's go ahead and break this list down card by card, as we always do, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at some gameplay. So we are playing 1 PSY Frame Driver, 1 Dragon Buster Destruction Sword, 3 Maxx, 2 PSY Framegear Gamma, 3 Doki Doki, 1 Prank-Kids Dropsies, 3 Adamancipator Seeker, 3 Adamancipator Researcher, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 1 Gigantes, 3 Koa'ki Mirror Guardian, 1 Revival Golem, 1 Tackle Crusader, 2 Prank-Kids Rocksies, 1 Nemeses Corridor, 2 Adamancipator Analyzer, 3 Koa'ki Mirror Supplier, 3 Block Dragon, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, and then 2 Infinite Impermanence. That's going to round out the main deck there. Extra deck will have 1 Thunder Dragon Colossus, 1 Herald of the Arc Light, 1 Cupid Pitch, 1 Adamancipator Risen Raptite, 1 Boarload Savage Dragon, 1 Adamancipator Risen Dragite, 1 Baronne de Fleur, 1 Gallant Granite, 1 Prank-Kids Meow-Meow-Mu, 1 Prank-Kids Dodo-Doodle-Doo, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Union Carrier, 1 Knightmare Unicorn, 1 Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess, and then finally 1 Accesscode Talker. Alright, so that's going to go ahead and round out the deck here. Now let's go and take a look at some gameplay. Alright, so the first duel that we're going to take a look at here is going to be against Dinomorphia, which is actually a pretty solid pick. I think this might be the loner deck. I'm pretty sure Dinomorphia is one of the loner decks. So this might actually be just straight up the loner deck. I'm not sure, but in any case here, we're going to take the first turn. I really only have the Doki Doki to open with, so I'm going to have to hope my opponent doesn't have any kind of disruption. And I don't think they... Actually, now that I remember looking at their deck list, they weren't playing any disruption at all, so I'm willing to bet this is actually just the Dinomorphia loner deck here. But in any case, yeah, I'll Doki Doki for the Adamancipator Analyzer, Excavating of Rocksies. This combo line really takes me back. It honestly does. You know, the Prank-Kids line, we kind of like to weave in here. I decided to banish the Buster Dragon because I didn't really think I was going to end up going into it. That's actually going to be wrong. We are actually going to be able to go into the Union Carrier. Like, we'll make a full board with just this one Doki Doki into Analyzer here. In any case, yeah, so we will banish the Buster Dragon, though, because I figured, you know, in the moment, I didn't think I was going to make Union Carrier, and I also, even if I could, it's not like I could equip it from hand anyway, so I wanted to keep the Ash Blossom and the Nibiru just in case I needed them. Alright, looks like the Raptite is going to find us a Researcher here, and then Researcher is going to excavate. We do have a target, at least in Supplier, so now that we have the Supplier and the Rocksies, we can now, you know, after we add the Guardian, of course, now we have the targets to go for the Gallant Granite to search out the Block Dragon. This is a lot of, like, you know, again, just rehashing old steps. It's funny, I was kind of thinking, like, ooh, do I have to, like, go look at my old combo guide to refresh on how plays in this deck work? But I was like, yeah, those will include Hulk, and it's no longer, I guess, relevant in that regard, so... now I decided to just kind of wing it, see how well I remembered it, and I like to think I did a pretty decent job, so... in any case, we'll use Block Dragon to, of course, as always, ever get Seeker, Researcher, and I'll get an Analyzer here because I actually think I already used my Gigantes, if I recall correctly. Maybe it's banished. Yeah, it's already banished here. So we already used that, so, you know, we can't special that. But we still have a target to special for the Seeker here. And I believe we can still special Researcher. Yeah, because we excavated off of Raptite. So we can still use the effect to special Researcher from our hand as long as we control one other rock monster. Here I'll make the Boarload Savage Dragon, equipping that Dodo-Doodle-Doo that's in the graveyard. Then I can special the Researcher. I can actually bring the Block Dragon back and make a Baron as well. And I get a link too on top of all that. I should have made IP Masquerena, but after doing all this like comboing, I'd actually forgotten that I had already set up the, I'd already banished the Buster Dragon Sword. So I was trying to set it up here on the Boarload for just like, you know, maximum I guess, combo potential, but as soon as I activated the Union Carrier effect, the Boarload wasn't an option. I was like, wait, why? What's going on? And then I remembered, oh yeah, duh, we banished the Buster Dragon earlier. Whoops. So, yeah, we'll just equip the Gamma, I guess, to the Union Carrier. It's not like, it didn't really matter at that point, and I just wanted to get something, just something out of the deck that I wasn't going to want to draw later, like this Gamma. So, I'll bring back the Block Dragon as well. So, I should have actually, again, made an IP Masquerena here. Then we could have ended with an IP into Block Dragon into Knightmare Unicorn for the opponent's turn. But had I not banished a Buster Sword, this would have been a Buster Luck with the Appaloosa and the Baron, as well as the Boarload here. So, you know, this is actually about the board we like to end on even when we had Hulky Fibrax. So as you can see, the banning of Hulk has not really impacted this deck too greatly. Of course, it is a little bit harder to reach this point. But, I mean, you know, I say that, but like we saw here, that was just one Doki Doki into an Adamancipator Analyzer, and that's all it took to get this board state. So, No, who knows, maybe the deck didn't lose as much power as we thought we did. Of course, you know, the deck's main weakness is to Maxx and Disruption in general, and that's really a lot of why the deck fell off. It takes a lot of resources to do stuff that other decks can do with less resources, and other decks can also play through Disruption much more easily than this deck can. So, in any case, opponent's going to start with a Diplos here. I really should have just Appaloosioned it. I decided to Ash it just to, like, because I could use Ash, and typically I like to use more narrow negation options like Ash when applicable, but looking back, I really should have just used the Appaloosia because, you know, of course I forgot until they set 4 back rows that, oh yeah, they have a trap card that fuses by sending monsters from deck to grave. I could have used the Ash Blossom on that. I mean, again, I'm not hurting for negates here. I've obviously got both Borreload and Baron here, so I'm not like super scared, but it's as far as like playing optimally, you know, I should have held the Ash and just used an Appaloosia negate there. I guess I was thinking like, you know, they might end up summoning something with more than 1600 attack, where they'd already use their normal summon, so I should have known at that point, but in any case here, I'm going to let the Trap Trick resolve. I'm not going to negate that. I think I'd rather just negate like whatever the Trap Trick ends up setting, which is a Ferret Flames. Very scary card. For those who are not aware, for those who didn't see our viewer special, where we featured Dinomorphia recently, yeah, this Ferret Flames has the ability to more or less shuffle all of our monsters back into our deck. Definitely don't want that to happen. I'm definitely not trying to have my monsters shuffle back, so yeah, like I said, I'm just going to save the Baron negate for that Ferret Flames there. I can still go into a Knightmare Unicorn, and I'll use that in the access code to get rid of the other back rows and pick them off. Again, saving the Baron negate for the one that I know to be a threat. Oh yes, I'm getting the Black Dragon Surge here. Alright, so the opponent does try to flip the Flames. I've of course still got the negate. I'm a little worried, like, what if their other back row is also a Ferret Flames? That would have been actually a very, like, you know, galaxy brain move on my opponent's part, if that had been the case, but fortunately for us, it's not. The opponent concedes as we negate their Ferret Flames, and they do not have an out to our very extensive board, and of course we're about to go into Accesscode Talker to even pick off the rest of that board as well. So, alright, that's going to do it for that game. Let's jump straight into the next one. Alright, so here is the next duel we're getting into here against Eldritch. Like I said in the profile, you know, Eldritch is still a good pick. There's not a whole lot of floodgates around. There are still a few, like Summon Limit is still a thing in this festival. And even aside from that, there's still plenty of back rows that Eldritch is capable of tormenting us with. So I'm going to end up going second here. The opponent's got a couple of back rows and a Lord of the Heavenly Prison for us. Before giving it back to us here. So opening with both Rocksies and Dropsies kind of sucks, but at the very least I'm going to summon Dropsies, and well, my plan was to go into, you know, Dodo-Doodle-Doo anyway. We wouldn't get the extra Rocksies at the end, but we'd still get some amount of plays. But opponent Maxx, I'm actually just going to pass in response to that because, you know, I don't know what their other face down is, and I know without Floodgates, Eldritch is probably going to be leaning a little bit more into like hand traps, like Ash Blossom and Nibiru and stuff. So, you know, normally a Maxx, if I got Maxx by Eldritch in this situation, I'd be a little more tempted to play out because I think they'd be less likely to have that in-hand disruption. But here, I'm just going to go ahead and pass. I also honestly didn't have too many plays with my current setup anyway, so I wasn't feeling too bad about just, you know, not continuing on there. They'll bring out an Eldritch in their deck and do a lot of damage to us, but still not quite enough for lethal, so I'm not like super duper concerned here. They've only got one face down as well, so unless it is the summon limit, I'm not scared of it. And I think they would have summon limited me before. Well, I don't know. You could have made an argument for Maxx and summon limit, so I guess the fact they had it before isn't necessarily an indication that they didn't have it at all, but opponent is going to have an Ash Blossom for this Doki Doki, and that might look like it's going to be enough to stop me from making any more plays here, but actually that's going to be not even the case at all, because I do have this Block Dragon that's alive in my hand. Even though I only have one Earth Monster in my graveyard, remember, Block Dragon can banish Earth Monsters from the hand as well, so here my plan is to banish my Seeker and my Rocksies, especially the Block Dragon. I can use these two to link for one of my generic League 2s, either IP Masquerena or Union Carrier. In this case, I think I'm going to get IP Masquerena because I don't anticipate my opponent's going to be summoning from the extra deck much, so setting up the Buster Lock with the Union Carrier doesn't seem like it does a whole lot here, but... And then, of course, from there, the Block Dragon is capable of searching out the Gigantes and the Seeker and the Researcher, and then once I get all those online, it's just I can do whatever I want, basically, at that point, so... yeah, Adamancipator is one of those combo decks where, like, you can follow combo lines to an extent, but there is also a good amount of it that's pretty, like, freeform, especially given the fact that, you know, a lot of your combo pieces, they excavate for more extension, so you can't plan like exactly what you're going to have, or even if you're going to excavate anything. So in that regard, Adamancipator does tend to be, like I said, more freeform, and as a result, sometimes a little more difficult to play, but usually the plays come relatively easily enough. It's just kind of like, what did I say? I made like a joke when I first played this deck back in the day of like, you know, how to play Adamancipators, or like Adamancipator combo guide, like, you know, if the game is asking you to activate an effect, just click yes. Or if you see a monster that's glowing yellow, just click on it and activate its effect. There's your combo guide. I mean, that is kind of more or less how this plays out. You kind of just like turbo things out, see what you get, and then make what you can with it. Sometimes that's a little bit more frustrating to play a deck like that, because I'm sometimes looking for, again, just something more like structured, but I don't know, it's also fun. There's definitely an aspect about it that's very fun as well. So yeah, as I was talking through all that, as you can see, I managed to set up a Knightmare Unicorn into Accesscode Talker. I'll even throw down the Borload set, or not the Borload, the Dragite here as well, just to make sure that I'm able to, because I can only pop one monster with this access code right now, because I only have Dark Link monsters in my graveyard. It's just the IP Masquerade and the Knightmare Unicorn. So if I want to lethal this turn, I just need to hit one rock off this Dragite at least, and I do. So, you know, easy enough there. Oh, I could have also brought back the Block Dragon. I forgot about that. So, I think I had lethal no matter what level 8 synchro I made there. I could have honestly just made the Borload for extra negation if I wanted to, but the opponent only had one card in hand, and I had the Koa'ki Guardian in case it happened to be like a Nibiru or something. So, yeah, there is that game there. So let's just go ahead and jump straight into the next one. Okay, so with this game here, we're playing against the mirror match, which I'm kind of surprised in 8 games I only ran into one mirror match. I thought a lot more people would be playing this deck, but maybe it could be that a lot of people who had this deck before had since dismantled it. I don't recommend dismantling decks, by the way, or like ultra rares at the very least. I guess if it's an ultra rare you know you'll never use, then that's fine. You can go ahead and dismantle it. But for the most part, if it's a deck that I've like quote unquote retired but enjoyed playing in the past, I'll keep this stuff for it anyway, just in case I want to come back to it at some point. So, in any case, my opponent's going to start off with the Koa'ki Guardian and a couple of back rows, so I'm thinking, okay, obviously it's going to be the mirror match. They revealed the Supplier, which confirms what I suspected, that they have a relatively dead hand, which is why they led with just the Guardian. Now the Guardian, accompanied by a couple of back rows, is still a fairly threatening opening. Obviously not as much as the, some of the end boards they've been doing, but it still threatens a monster effect negation among other nasty surprises. So I'm going to lead with the Adamancipator Analyzer here to start by specialing that for my hand. I actually didn't expect my opponent to negate this. This was purely a bait, but it ended up working. So okay, cool. We definitely take those. And then from there they get to special the Supplier and add another Guardian. I don't care about that at all. That's not really, I don't think that's really relevant. I'll lead with the Doki Doki, or not lead, but I'll follow up with rather the Doki Doki next. The opponent does have an Infinite Impermanence, which I did expect them to have, but as you can see, I've got a Block Dragon in my hand. So just like last time, even though our Doki Doki got stopped, we can still banish the Earths from hand and grave to special the Block Dragon. This time, rather than IP Masquerade, I am going to go into the Union Carrier because I'm going to try to set up a Buster Lock here. Of course, unlike last time we were playing against Eldritch, I know Buster Lock doesn't do anything to them. Adamancipator, I know that's, the complete opposite. Buster Lock would definitely devastate my opponent here. So I'm going to slap down the Gigantes and the Researcher and the Seeker, and then I'm going to get Nibiru. So yeah, that definitely sucks. And I'm pretty sure my opponent had the trigger set to off. I've talked about this before with Nibiru, right, where if you've got Nibiru and your opponent's coming up on 5 summons, but you don't want to Nibiru at 5 summons, but you also don't want them to know you have Nibiru, because, if after a bunch of summons your opponent suddenly gets a prompt to respond with an effect, it's not hard to tell they have a Nibiru there. But if you flip the toggle to off, you'll obviously hide that you have the Nibiru. Now, you do have to be mindful that you're going to flip it back to on or auto, like not at the moment you want a Nibiru, but a little bit before. So you have to really know when you're going to drop the Nibiru, but yeah, that ended up happening to me here because, I wasn't getting any kind of a prompt from my opponent as I was doing summons, but then once I brought out all the stuff from Gigantes, then the opponent dropped the Nibiru, giving me a pretty solid sized token, and not a lot of resources to deal with it. I know this is a Koa'ki Guardian. I know this is just a back row that, hasn't been useful yet, so my opponent's going to be very much in top deck mode trying to deal with this token. But I don't just have the token, I have other things that can help me out here as well, namely the Nemeses Corridor that I still have in my hand. I go ahead and send that for the Thunder Dragon Colossus. That'll prevent my opponent from searching, which will prevent them from making a whole bunch of other plays. I'll throw out the Block Dragon in defense mode here as well, just for some extra protection, because now my opponent is going to be really like hard pressed to actually like get to my life points, or even like, you know, get rid of my board here. This is a fairly sticky board, right? Because the Thunder Dragon Colossus has the effect to protect itself from destruction or card effect, although actually I don't have, I have the one Thunder monster in my graveyard, of course, the Nemeses Corridor, so it only gets one protection, but it is a protection nonetheless, and of course will stop them from searching with their Block Dragon or some of their other effects. It doesn't stop the excavations, because it only stops effects that add cards from the main deck to the hand, but it will still stop some things from the opponent there. Of course, the Nibiru token itself is pretty decently beefy, so my opponent's going to have to deal with that, and the Block Dragon's got 3k defense, and also can't be destroyed by card effects. Even if my opponent does manage to remove this Block Dragon, that's totally fine with me, because then I get a bunch of searches. So, you know, even though we did get disrupted by the Nibiru, we are still on a very, very solid board here, and it's one that I don't think my opponent's going to be able to break through with the few resources that they have. And sure enough, after my opponent summons the Guardian, well, actually I thought they conceded right there, but I guess they do end up having some more plays here. Ah yes, they go for the Asa, the Earth Charmer, but I actually don't have any Earth monsters in my graveyard for them to take, which is very nice. I ended up banishing them all with the Block Dragon there, so they will go into a Link 3, it's just a Knightmare Unicorn, but they don't have anything in hand to make any like headway on the board. It is a royal finish, it's a very pretty Knightmare Unicorn, but it is a Knightmare Unicorn that nevertheless will not help them advance the board state. At that point, they concede, giving us the win. So even though we got hit by the Nibiru, I know I said this deck isn't like the most resilient to disruption, and truth to tell, it's not, but we just happen to end up in a situation here where we got Nibiru, they couldn't deal with the token, and we also had the Nemesis Corridor in hand for some extra, I guess it ended up being rub-ins with Thunder Dragon Colossus because my opponent didn't have any search effects anyway, but still nice to have it on the board just in case that did come up. So we've got one more game to look at with these Anti-Spell Festival games, so let's jump straight into it. Alright, so the last game here is going to be against a Zodiac deck, which to be fair is a deck that I hadn't really considered before. It's not a bad pick for this festival. You miss out on Tenki. That's about all you miss out on though, and if you're playing a pure Zoo deck, Tenki is not nearly as important as would be for like, you know, like something like Tri-Zoo or something like that, but anyway, the deck that the opponent's playing is fairly back row heavy, as you would expect like a pure Zoo to be. I honestly am a bit surprised that they actually opted to go first playing a pure Zoo deck. Pure Zoo pretty much always wants to go second, although to be fair, I say that, but I'm actually not that surprised. In this festival in particular, we do see that going first is very important for not only combo-based decks like Adamancipator, but also back row-based decks to be able to set their back row up. Still, Pure Zoo, though, I think is one of those decks where it's in a unique spot where you could actually get away with playing just like, not even necessarily a whole bunch of back rows that you have to set face down, but you could just play a bunch of disruption like hand traps, or you could even play like 3 imperm and 3 evenly or something like that. So anyway, I guess I'm just a little surprised to see Zoo go first. Even in this format, I think you could still build the pure Zodiac in a way that you would want to go second. You could throw in some Kaijus and stuff like that too, but in any case here, the opponent's going to fire off a Maxx against my Adamancipator Seeker when I go to activate the effect. I'll of course still resolve it and they'll get a draw, but here, I was kind of thinking because they only set a couple of face down cards, they might not necessarily be a back row deck. It could be like a combo base deck like mine, or like just, you know, a non-back row deck that just happened to open not so great. So I'm going to opt not to give them the draws here. I also know, again, that like Adamancipator is going to give them a lot of draws to do just about anything, and I have the Block Dragon in here to potentially recover from a Nibiru, but I don't know. I also am not trying to invite it if not necessary, so I decided to stop there, just get in a couple attacks and then pass. I wonder, just again, based on my opponent only sitting 2 back row but still holding 3 cards, I was like, if they're only top decking a couple of cards, one for the Maxx, one for turn here, I'm not really too scared of that kind of a hand, given how little they did with it last turn. So I'm just going to pass them here. I think they end up setting, a couple more back row and then passing back to me. So, you know, it's a little scary to have to play into all these back row, but at the same time, it's they weren't doing too much here. I'm going to lead with the Adamancipator Seeker effect, see if I can bait out of the gate. They do have an imperm. If they flip up 1 imperm, I expect they will probably have another face down or some kind of negate just because they have 4 back rows here. So I'll then special the Researcher, go ahead and activate that effect. They do actually have another Infinite Impermanence, so This is nice though. This is, you know, it's a little bit annoying, but at the same time, this is what I expected out of multiple back rows in a situation like this. So getting them out of the way like this is definitely ideal here. Gonna normal that Revival Golem and then go into a Raptite, activate that, well, after I specially Supplier here, I'm gonna activate that Excavate and see if it goes through. The opponent's got a PSY Framegear Gamma, which I thought about maybe negating with Koa'ki or Guardian, but then I realized, like, you know, it's not that big of a deal, and just in case that last card does happen to be like a Nibiru, or like another Ash Blossom, or another Maxx or something, well, I think they would have Maxx'd by now, but if it happens to be something that can mess me up, I'll save the Guardian. I don't need the Supplier to come down, like it's not hugely essential, that's fine. I will fire off the Maxx just to cycle it and get a draw here, and get an Earthen Graveyard for Block Dragon as well. So I'll do that in response, and then the opponent actually responds with another PSY Framegear Gamma, which actually creates an interesting situation, because if you read PSY Framegear Gamma, it's got to summon itself and the driver, and then if you do that, it does the negate. Now, I'm thinking, like, okay, what are the odds my opponent's actually playing a PSY Frame deck where they would play multiple drivers? Not very high at all. I actually did play against PSY Frames relatively recently on a regular ladder, but that's beside the point. Here, I'm thinking, like, the second PSY Frame against my Koa'ki or Supplier probably isn't going to resolve, because they probably won't have a driver to grab from their deck, so I'm just going to let the second Gamma resolve, not going to negate it with the Guardian at all. They'll get their driver and their Gamma, negate my Maxx, but then the second Gamma can't resolve because it doesn't have a driver to pull from the deck, so I do get to special my Supplier in the long run. So it's funny, I initially was thinking, like, okay, it's fine if I don't get the Supplier, but I'll get a draw with Maxx, but then the opponent was like, no, you won't get a draw with Maxx, you'll get your Supplier, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, I'm cool with that. So yeah, here I'm going to go for the Dragite. I'm just going to try to clear away some of these back row here, but the opponent's got a Solemn Judgment. Totally fine with me. Again, like I just said, my goal with the Dragite was to clear away the back row, so whether that is with its own effect or by, you know, having the back row be responded to it, either way, totally cool with that. Yeah, so here I'll just find the Doki Doki, I can pitch the Guardian, get a Rocksies from deck, I can do the Prank-Kids line here real quick. This might seem a bit egregious, like you might be thinking, like, okay, your opponent's at really low life points, just go ahead, you have a lot of resources on board already, just go ahead and finish them off, but I still think it definitely pays to be prepared. My opponent's only got one unknown factor here, but that unknown factor could still pretty easily mess me up if I'm not too careful, and if I try to play too carelessly into it. So I'm going to go a little bit out of my way just to go into Knightmare Unicorn and get rid of it, and then I can just access code and pop away the rest of the board. I mean, I don't have to do that, but I can do that, so I'm going to. That's just all there is to it. But yeah, at this point, there are no more unknown factors. I know that last card in hand is a Gamma that they can't use because they don't have a driver left in their deck, so yeah, just gonna special the access code, get the effect. Did I really end up sinking into, I think I synced into a bore load here as well. Yeah, okay, at this point I'm being egregious. At this point I am just kind of like getting the rubbins in a little bit, but I don't know. Oh, and then I summoned a Block Dragon too for good measure, because why not? Alright, so after clearing away their stuff, we will finally just go ahead and swing in for lethal here. So yeah, there are those games now taken care of, and yeah, let's just go ahead and move on to the outro. Okay, everybody, thank you for watching all the way to the very end. I very much appreciate that. Also appreciate those of you who are commenting and or subscribing. All three of those things both mean a lot to me personally and are great ways to support the channel here as well. I hope you enjoyed this you know, showcasing with Adamancipators in the Anti-Spell Festival. Again, this is definitely, if you have these, you know, tools available to you to build this deck, this would be my go-to choice for a deck to build. And honestly, look at the Ultra Rares, especially in the extra deck, a lot of them do tend to be more staple like based, and you know, really the main archetype one is Dragite, which if you're playing Sword Souls, you might already have a Dragite anyway, have crafted it for that extra deck. So yeah, the Block Dragons are super rares, so I think this is a relatively budget-friendly option for most people. You don't have to include stuff like Colossus or Union Carrier. You can definitely get away without those. So again, if you happen to have a lot of these staples, I would consider building this deck, as it is a very nice combo deck for this event. And also, like I alluded to earlier, be on the lookout because I do plan to feature this deck more outside of the Anti-Spell Festival in the near future as well. So if you like Adamancipators a lot, you got a lot to look forward to. But I think that's going to go ahead and do it for this video. So without further ado, this is Xlex signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.